Click is a perfectly harmless 2006 film where Adam Sandler meets Christopher Walken in a Bed Bath & Beyond and receives from him a magical remote that will control reality in the same way a remote might control a television. He can turn down the volume on his dog's barking, fast forward conversations with his wife, pause his boss, and fart in his face without any repercussions. He can even skip chapters to avoid a tedious dinner with his parents or rewind to the moment of his conception. Why would you do that, Adam? Click falls into that category of vapid potato chip comedies that you can just pop in on a lazy afternoon and feel your brain cells drive off a bridge. And if you're wondering why this matters or what this has to do with what we're talking about today, then you need to know that this film unexpectedly takes an uncomfortably dark turn. And as a 12-year-old watching this back in the day, it genuinely caused what I can only describe as my first ever existential crisis that would go on to fuel an obsession that I still have with a particular type of storytelling. And I want to tell you all about that today. But real quick, let's hear a word from today's sponsor. Do you like things? Weird start. Are there pieces of media that inspire you and, at least in some part, make you who you are? And if so, do you like surrounding yourself with those things? If your answer is yes, Displate is something you really want a taste of. Let's say you have an affinity for Elden Ring. Displate has a large selection of premium quality metal posters that will strike your fancy. You want Godfrey? They got Godfrey. You want Ronnie? They got Ronnie. You want Melania? I got Melania. You can't have her. This is the last one. Elden Ring is just one of many officially licensed brand shops. Additionally, Displate hosts over 40,000 independent artists, meaning if you find something you like, not only are you making your space feel more like home, you are helping artists get paid. And this also means that the sky is the limit for how many different designs are available. If there is something you like, Displate probably has it, and if you're worried about installation because you don't own this place, it's as easy as reaching down to give your dog a little butt scritch. No power tools, no damage, it's all adhesive and magnets. So if you'd like to support the channel, artists, and the overall aesthetic of your home, be sure to use my link in the description below for up to 35% off your order from Displate today. Thanks again to Displate for sponsoring. Now back to the show. In the second act of Click, Michael Newman makes a grave mistake. He is under the impression that he has received a promotion at work, but later finds out that it will not actually happen for another month or two. He then overhears his wife breaking the news to his children that they cannot yet afford the bikes he just brought them home, and in a painful, ashamed act of desperation, he grabs the remote and says,
"Fast forward me to my promotion."
It works, and initially he is elated, but upon hearing that his promotion actually took well over a year, he realizes how much of his life he has just forfeited. His children no longer like the same TV shows, his dog has passed away, his wife has entered them into marriage counseling. You see, during the fast forwards, Michael is on autopilot. His body will fulfill responsibilities, but he is not fully present, meaning he does not remember what happens and is emotionally distant from anyone who tries to interact with him. And because the remote learns from his previous actions, it continuously and involuntarily drags him forward through gaping chunks of his life. At first it was a year, but now he has blinked and 10 years have gone by. He is now obese, his children are now teenagers, his wife is now remarried. 6 more years, he has had cancer and a heart attack, but this is all news to him. What was once a flick about a funny man with a remote is now a terrifying story of regret and the fragility of time that truly begins to take root when Michael is informed of his father's death. What everyone else has had years to process is now being heaped upon Michael in a matter of minutes, culminating in a genuinely heartbreaking scene where Michael rewinds to the last time he spoke with his father. Remember, he was on autopilot, so you can imagine how that went. And as you watch this man cling to the final unsquandered slivers of his life, you realize that if you remove the comedy and the "it was all a dream" twist at the end, this would have been a very different movie, a chilling exploration of what a sudden and unwelcome passage of time will do to the human psyche. As a 12-year-old watching this, it was the first time I had ever seen time be used in a story as a source of terror. But terror isn't exactly the right word. The passage of time fills me with a certain sadness that is difficult to articulate. When I think about how short my life on this planet is in comparison to the eternity that will bookend it on either side, I kind of just stop whatever I'm doing and just stare into space. Which makes me great at parties. But because our time in the world as we know it is so short, the thought of losing any of it or the thought of chunks of time moving by without my consent like poor Michael experiences is more than just frightening. It's somber. It's like dying half a death. The idea of waking up a stranger in your own world, left behind by all of the changes and events that you were not present for, somehow feels cruel. Terry Wallace is a man who passed away around a year ago. He was 57 years old. However, he was only conscious for 38 of those years. At the age of 19, he was in a terrible car accident, leaving him in a vegetative state. That was 1984. He would not awaken until 2003, at which point he still believed the year to be 1984. Sometime later, when Terry met his new sister-in-law, he said that she was way too pretty and way too old for his brother. Although he may have been poking fun, to Terry, in some ways his brother was still 12 years old. If you've watched my channel before, you'll know that I have some really specific fears: elevators, fourth wall breaks, doppelgangers. This video is one of those. I want to tell you about pieces of media that have, in one way or another, evoked these kinds of emotions in me. Time skips do not occur naturally. People are not designed to handle changes of this magnitude. Every day and every second of our lives must be lived. They each provide us with new information to process the passage of time as it happens. But when the mind does not have this chance, and when hundreds of millions of seconds of information must be understood in a single moment, if I were to place you in a dark, windowless room with no clock or any form of technology for a few moments, how would you tell how much time had passed? This is a room in the Stanley Parable, specifically in the Ultra Deluxe expansion, and it is, for all intents and purposes, unextraordinary. No windows, no doors, just some miscellaneous office decor and supplies tossed about with no real care. In the middle of the room is a skip button, placed there by the narrator. If you get tired of him talking, you can just and jumps you ahead of whatever self-absorbed monologue he's on. Now, we could get philosophical and talk about the many ways that this is symbolic of. However, what I'd like to talk about is what happens whenever you.
Stanley, please don't push the button again. It's been 12 hours. You've just been frozen there. I don't know why the skips are getting longer, but they're really, truly getting longer, and my God, there's no way out of the room.
Something strange begins to happen here. We shift away from the humorous jaunt through Stanley's office, and instead, the situation becomes dire. The door you walked in is gone. Every skip seems to be getting longer, and the narrator is beginning to get desperate.
Oh, hello, it's you. You're here again. Welcome. I've had so much time, I stopped keeping track after a year.
But the game is designed such that skipping is the only way to progress the story. So naturally, it feels callous, leaving the poor narrator for what could be ages, but it's only a brief moment for you, so why not just. After enough skips, the narrator will stop speaking and you will remain trapped in this room, completely uninformed of how much time has passed. With some skips, nothing changes, you're left in silence. In others, that silence is broken in some way, like when the smoke alarm begins chirping, either from a low battery or some kind of airborne decay. The potted plant has died, the light bulbs have all burnt out. At some point, there is a leak in the ceiling. This place has not undergone maintenance in an indeterminate amount of time, but all you can do is. The ceiling collapses. Life begins. Life ends. What is outside this room? What is left? What has changed? What is that indescribable noise out there? Just how far have I skipped? It was startling to me the first time I played this, just how far from home this sequence made me feel, considering I hadn't gone anywhere. All of this happened in a single room. And the reason I bring this to the table as an example is that it paints a picture of the uncanny endlessness of time, that it stretches an infinite distance, and furthermore, that every place we know, the very place you are sitting right now as you watch this, will one day, in some way, travel that infinity. The thought of what might occupy that space then is frightening, unknowable. We'll come back to this because now I'm thinking about what this half-eaten McDouble is going to look like in a million years. For now, let's talk about something a little less esoteric and a little more intimate. Before Your Eyes is a short little indie title that sees you take the role of Benny. You experience his life in a series of tender, colorful sequences. His mother taking him for his first trip to the beach, his father filming his first birthday, photo albums read to him before bed, the day he receives his first pet, his first math assignment, his first friend. Before Your Eyes paints these delicate little pictures of moments that might feel strangely familiar, and it does this so well that everything else around you in the real world just sort of melts away. You're here, you're present in these places, and you don't want to leave, so you're careful not to, because if you do, it passes in the blink of an eye, both figuratively and literally. You see, this game is controlled via webcam, not a skip button. It watches you as you play and tracks your blinking. Closing your eyes is how you move along the story, and when you see this on screen, it means that when you next blink, the game will jump forward in time, sometimes seconds, sometimes years. And because blinking is something that, 1, usually happens without conscious effort, and 2, suddenly becomes surprisingly hard not to do when you're trying not to blink, there are times that you unintentionally rip yourself away from one of these tender scenes before the dialogue has finished or before you are finished. This time, the skip button is at least partially involuntary, and unlike that dark room, you want to be here. Most video games will allow you to stay in a place as long as you like. Artificial days may pass, but your character does not age. Time doesn't really go by, but much like time in our lives, time in Before Your Eyes does not care if you are ready. In an interview with thegamer.com, game director Oliver Lewin says that there are some lines in the game that very few people are going to catch, and they were designed that way. I personally find that exciting. You can't catch everything. I feel like that's lifelike. There is an unapologetic authenticity to how it feels to play Before Your Eyes. It captures that sensation of regret, wishing you had said those words you wanted to say, missing those days you thought would never end. You blink one day and you're an adult. You are now separated from what your life once was. There is a separation between the people you knew then and perhaps what they are like now. And that separation is something that Jeff Rake, the creator of Manifest, had in mind when he wrote his script for the show. The first episode of Manifest starts as follows. The Stone family is headed back home from their vacation to Jamaica, but because of an overbooking issue, Ben Stone, his son Cal, and Ben's sister Michaela all take a later flight than the rest of the family. Notably, these 3 characters all have loose ends. Cal's leukemia isn't responding to treatment, Ben is desperately looking for a solution to help his son, and Michaela is on the fence about a marriage proposal. And as their plane prepares to land in New York, ground control seems confused to be receiving Flight 828. They double-check the name of the captain, the number of people on board. Upon landing, the passengers notice that they don't have phone service. As they exit the plane, instead of being greeted with their loved ones, the Stones are met with sirens, ambulances, FBI agents. The passengers are all informed that although their plane left on April 7, 2013, the current date is November 4th, 2018. They have all been missing for over 5 years. Ben's daughter is now 5 years older. Cal's twin sister, who he has been with since birth, is now a stranger to him. Michaela's father must now break the news to her that in these 5 years away, her mother has passed away due to an illness. Michaela was just arguing with her right before the flight. Hours have passed for some, years have passed for others at this disproportionately more bitter than sweet reunion scene. And you see the reverberations of this all throughout the first season of the show. Ben struggled to reconnect with his daughter, who now sees another man as her father. Michaela's confusion at her fiancé's decision to find another partner. How long is long enough to move on after your lover dies? These are conversations that should remain hypothetical, but they are exactly the kind of very real, very gut-wrenching topics that these characters are expected to confront. Unlike Click, where a man unwillingly loses chunks of his life, in stories like Manifest, our main characters still have their entire lifespan ahead of them. What is potentially even more heartbreaking is that although they haven't lost any of their lives, the world has moved on without them, leaving them in a state of stasis, unable to fully reconnect with the people that have given their lives meaning. And this time dilation is a trope that you might have seen before, the most notable example being the Miller's Planet scene in Interstellar. The crew of the Endurance has to follow a signal to Miller's Planet, but because of its proximity to a black hole, time passes on it much slower than on Earth.
Every hour we spend on that planet will be 7 years back on Earth.
What should be a quick 15-minute errand, however, abruptly tumbles into a catastrophic loss. Now, an over hour-long endeavor, costing them over 60,000 hours back on the Endeavor and the life of one of its passengers. When the crew finally return, they are informed that their calculations were wrong. 23 years, 4 months, and 8 days have passed on Earth. Without saying a word, Cooper goes to check for messages from his family, and in a single sitting, he will see half a lifetime of memories be relayed to him. His son Tom, a teenager, has found a girlfriend. Moments later, now a grown man, Tom introduces his son. They've named him Jesse. Cooper is mystified until the next message, when he finds out that his new grandson would not survive Earth's declining conditions. They buried him out back next to Grandpa, someone else who was alive before the mission earlier this morning. In the span of a few moments, Cooper went from a father to a grandfather to only a father once again. And it's because the crew of the Endurance knew that this was a potential consequence of their mission that we feel the intensity of this scene. Unlike Manifest, where the time warp is a surprise, here it is something that we, the audience, and the characters are fully aware of going into. Everyone fully understands the implications of this mission, so when they're fighting to get off Miller's Planet, it only compounds the urgency of every little decision they make and adds friction to the combustible drama for us and for the characters, which is something that a little anime called Gunbuster takes full advantage of. Gunbuster is a short series directed by Hideaki Anno, his first ever directorial role, well before that one anime he made that no one really talks about. It aired appropriately just over 23 years before Interstellar. Noriko Takaya is the daughter of a famous space captain, and unfortunately, because space is rarely your friend in fiction, he does not make it home and she is left devastated, constantly trying to fill the shoes of a man whose reputation is legendary. And with the help of her coach, who is just straight up Elvis Presley, she will make friends, find her way, and save the galaxy from parasitic aliens. The show is a little unfinished and rough around the edges, but it's fun, it's short, it's what you'd expect from a mecha anime, right down to the abrupt and unexpected nudity. But because a lot of the space travel is done at almost light speed, and because the laws of nature in Gunbuster slow you down if you get too close to light speed, while Noriko and her friends are out saving the galaxy and experiencing time normally, everyone on Earth is aging rapidly. On one 20-minute mission, she returns to find that the very under-construction ship she is stationed on has been completed in the 6 months that have passed. At another point, she returns to Earth to find her high school best friend is now a mother. Initially, these things are laughed off as a strange quirk of space travel, but because the dilation is well understood by the characters, it only bolsters the emotion when later, on a mission that only these two are qualified to complete, we see something truly heart-wrenching. Kazumi Amino has a complicated relationship with the man that trains her and Noriko, but it's hinted at that the two of them have a bit of a romance cultivating that neither has the time to pursue. Suspicious minds, you know how it is. And so when Noriko and Kazumi go to leave on this multiple-hour mission that will cost them at least 6 Earth months, and you recall that Coach has a terminal illness, you begin to realize that he may not be here when they get back, and why Kazumi seems to be putting on an act. There are things left unsaid, and all of this boils to the surface in the middle of the mission. Enemy fighters are swarming, alarms are blaring, metal is tearing, and yet Kazumi is frozen, her tears floating in zero gravity. She knowingly yet helplessly squanders seconds that are precious days with the man she loves back on Earth simply because she cannot deal with how cruel the flow of time is. It's desperately unfair that time is flowing through him faster than her, killing him faster than her. There's something ironic in the fact that Cooper receives transmissions from millions of miles away and that Kazumi is further away from Earth than most humans have ever been, but it's not space that's truly separating these characters. Distance isn't the issue like it is in so many stories. It's the fabric of time, stretching these souls into different realities than locations. Makoto Shinkai, the director of Your Name, Weathering With You, Garden of Words, the gorgeous desktop wallpaper generators as I like to call them, he has a structure that he typically follows in his films. He likes to present two characters that, for one reason or another, cannot be together. In the Garden of Words, a student and a teacher are separated by their age and societal norms. In Weathering With You, a girl cannot escape a terrible prophecy, numbering her days remaining with her first real friend. In Voices of a Distant Star, distance is physically separating our star-crossed lovers. This man has made a lot of money because of his fixation on finding new ways to place a chasm between kindred hearts. Distance, society, time. Your Name is a masterclass in subverting expectations, so if you haven't seen it and you want to, I can't plead with you enough to skip this part. There is a timestamp on screen. But throughout his 2016 film Your Name, Mitsuha and Taki are swapping bodies, occasionally slipping into each other's lives. And in doing so, they accidentally get to know each other, not only from leaving notes between every swap, but also by taking the other's life for a joyride and in doing things that maybe the other doesn't have the courage to do. It's heartwarming, it's fun, it's sweet. You watch it and mentally start planning their wedding. But it's clear that the body swap is the gimmick, so now we just have to wait for them to meet and then...
なぜかもう二度と俺と三葉との入れ替わりは
Taki is confused because Mitsuha has now gone radio silent. He wants to meet her, but his only clues to her location are sketches that he has drawn from his time in her shoes. And so he takes a train to the countryside where he thinks she is. After chasing dead ends for an entire day, he finally finds what he is looking for, a town called Itomori that was tragically leveled by a comet 3 years ago. Mitsuha was swapping lives with Taki from another time. But you assume that because both of their lives are being presented in tandem with each other, that they happen at the same time, when in reality, the events of her life are 3 years behind his. And this is made painfully clear when Mitsuha actually goes to see him in the city, and he has no idea who she is, because in her timeline, he has not started swapping bodies with her yet. She is 3 years too early. Like before, location is not the issue. These two are separated by realities, one where a boy lives a typical life in the city, and another where a girl and her town are erased by a natural disaster. Final Fantasy X follows a similar but in some ways, inverted structure. Your first time playing, you assume during this opening sequence that Titus is being sent to a new place or new world, and even after it's revealed that he was plunged into the future, you play the entire game as him. There's no reason to think there's any catch. It's Yuna we should be worried about. She's destined to be sacrificed for the good of the people. That's where the drama is cultivated in the narrative. You're marching this girl to her doom. Don't get attached. But you later realize that Titus is actually the one who is on borrowed time, and that this entire journey he spent building meaningful relationships and even falling in love has in truth been an impossible crossing of the timelines. A magical hour of twilight to bridge the gap between the time that he does not belong and the death he died 1,000 years ago. He didn't travel 1,000 years. 1,000 years traveled through him, and with it came people he was never meant to meet. Love he was never meant to find. Time can be used to separate, but it can also be used to bring together, even if that enchanting sunset can never last. We have talked a lot about how stories can use time to hurt you today, to break down characters and force them to face heartache that no one should ever have to endure. But to close this out, I want to talk about what we do with this. Where do these stories go once they rip these characters away from one another? What happens to those connections? In the final episode of Gunbuster, to ensure Earth survives any future invasions, Noriko and Kazumi must ignite a human-manufactured black hole, the planet Jupiter somehow condensed to a fraction of its size in preparation to become a singularity. Being there warps their time exponentially. Jung warns them that if they do this, it is effectively death, not because they'll die, but because they'll be plunged so enormously far into the future that everyone they know and love will be gone. But there is no other option. They understand what this means. And with one final effort, the battle is won, the Earth is saved, and the two girls are lost to time. When they finally return to Earth, a full 12,000 years in the future, is it the same Earth they left behind? It's the same place, but does that even matter anymore? What could possibly be waiting for them? What could possibly be waiting for Cooper? Assuming he could ever make it home, his family all consider him as good as dead, forever lost to the cold, dark vacuum of space, and yet it's because of Cooper's connection to his daughter and the knowledge that they share that he is able to communicate with her beyond space and time to save humanity. Yuna and Titus were never meant to meet, but because they did, Spira is now free from the cycle of calamity that has plagued it for so long. The separation caused by Flight 828 caused heartbreak for all the passengers and their families, but it's their kindness and patience in spite of those new obstacles that shines brightest in the series. Taki and Mitsuha are in many ways worlds apart, but without their circumstances, hundreds of lives would have been lost. Michael's life is wasted. He has only shreds of it left, but it's because his time is limited that he chooses to finally live in the moment, make the most of it, and teach his son the lesson that he should have learned all those years ago. Despite how many ticks of the clock are left, there is still meaning. Despite the expanse that time stretches kindred hearts away from each other, red strings stretch further. Despite how fragile we are to the ravages of time, despite 12,000 years passing, the people remember the two lost girls who would one day return. Hope endures. This room might travel the endless flow of time, but so does love. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I just want to let you know that I was in my fucking feelings writing this. I usually cry like once every 6 videos, but reliving everything from Final Fantasy X and Your Name just sent me spiraling. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to support the show, buy a shirt. I have 2 of those now, but they're only available for a limited time, so don't miss out. If you do miss that window but still want to help out, I also have a Patreon. For $1 a month, you can get access to bonus content, bloopers, updates, polls, early access. You might even get your name read at the end of the video like these lovely people. Pape, Novak, Justin Gast, Max Ayala, Ascendium, Gabriel, I'm not even going to try, Gabriel J. Hamill, Mattia, and MK. Oh, and I simply cannot forget to send a massive thanks to my buddy Steven, who helped make this possible. If not for him, I would have no clue Gunbuster even exists. He is an anime savant, and he and some other friends have a podcast that I was a guest on recently. It would mean the world to me if you went and gave it a listen. Link in the description. Thanks again for watching, take care of yourself, and if you're watching this 12,000 years in the future, then I hope you especially have yourself a damn good one.
You're a good audience, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.